Hi, I'm Adam.
And I'm Kara, and welcome back to Crunchy Cozy Games. So we've been counting down our top 100 games of all time.
That we played last year.
Yes. And so today we are rounding out, almost to the top of the list.
Yeah, today, for me, I was really excited because, like we talked about last list, at any given time, any of these could be my favorite game.
Absolutely.
These are all games that after we get done playing with them, I'm almost always like, oh, let's play that again. With a couple of exceptions,
Sure.
Of course, for some of the larger games.
Sure.
But
that's more logistics, though,
Yeah.
rather than like desire to play the game, you know?
Exactly. There are definitely games on this list that we have finished playing, and then I have gone on like Board Game Geek and like looked up like what other people think about it and their reviews and their strategies, because I'm just like, it's one that sticks with you.
Absolutely. That's fair.
So yeah. I don't know. I don't know if there's much to talk about. I kind of just want to dive right in.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So my number 20 is a game that you mentioned in your last list.
Oh, okay.
And I just think this game is super elegant. It is probably one of the most beautiful games in our collection, and that is Rococo.
Oh, yes.
So
cute.
As you mentioned in Rococo, the idea is that you are essentially a tailor making these pea coats and gowns to go to a French ball. And, the winner is the person that gets the most victory points based on a couple of different things. Like, you can fund decorations, you can fund fireworks, and then you also score points based on the number of coats and dresses that you've got in specific rooms.
Right. Yeah. There's room bonuses. There's also bonuses for the color or the amount of materials that went into it. Each of the coats themselves, and then also for the type of card that you use to build that or to make that coat.
Right. That's one of my favorite interesting aspects about this game is you've got three types of workers: bronze, silver, and gold. I think it's like apprentice, journeyman, and master.
Yes.
And the master employees can do just about anything.
Yes.
Whereas the silver employees can do all of the player actions except for one, and the bronze can do all of them except for 2 or 3. And so you're kind of managing your hand to figure out, like, okay, which employee do I need to play here to get the resources that I know I need, and also to gather more employees or to make some clothing that only the master employees can do.
Right.
And I just love that sort of like puzzle aspect of doing it. There's also a really fun element where when you make a garment, you can decide if you're going to rent it and send it to the ball, which will score you points, or if you're just going to sell that garment to make money.
That's true, because money can be kind of scarce in the game. That is, it's hard to come by sometimes.
Just like in real life.
Well,
but yeah, I think that game is just a delight, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It's a wonderful production of it, and I would highly recommend, even though it's on the pricier side, I recommend it to anybody that really likes that kind of economic Euro game. So yeah, my number 20, Rococo.
Cool. My number 20 is a classic that I think you've talked about already. Maybe. Ticket to Ride.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think that Ticket to Ride is one of those games that is so easy to pick up.
Yes.
Right? You can play this. It is super family friendly. And I really enjoy this type of challenge. I think that it is super scalable as well.
Sure.
It can be as challenging as you want to make it. But based on, the cards or the objectives that you choose to keep. It's really fun at 2 players. I think it's even more fun at 4 players.
Yeah, it starts to get a little mean with more players because
does.
you've got people blocking routes and such.
Right. Well, and then, it really kind of emphasizes like the race to get across the country with the rails that I think is maybe a little missing in the 2-player game, but I feel like you get you get the satisfaction of accomplishing so many more objectives in the 2-player game.
Here's a trivia question for you. How many different versions of Ticket to Ride do you think there are?
Gosh, I don't even know.
And I'm not talking about just like different languages, but just like how many different variations they have.
Well, because don't they have them for like cities now?
They have at least a couple cities.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of countries.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know the answer. If you do, leave it in the comments.
Okay. Well, then I'm not even gonna guess.
Well, you should throw a number so the comments can tell you how wrong you are.
I'm gonna guess 24.
Okay.
I have literally no idea.
I was going to say 20, so you're actually above where I was at.
Okay,
but
all right.
There's a lot.
Yeah. All right, so my number 20 is Ticket to Ride, the classic.
Yeah, it's a good one. Okay, my number 19 is one that I know is going to be very high on your list.
Sure.
And that is Flamecraft.
Yep.
Flamecraft is darling. I mean, that's probably the best word I have to describe it.
It is one of the cutest games that we own.
Basically what you are doing, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it because I know you will and I know you're going to gush about it. Basically, you've got your cute little dragon meeple that is going and visiting different shops and gathering the resources that are there. You essentially have two choices on a turn. You can either go to a shop and gather the resources that are there, taking whatever actions correspond to those cards and the dragons that you place there. Or you can enchant shops, which then allow you to take one of the actions that's in that shop as well.
All of the actions, I think.
Yeah,
if there's dragons there.
Right.
Yeah.
This is one of those games that, like, you're just constantly getting stuff, and that feels cool. I mean, you're gathering the resources, which are some of the most, the screen-printed ones. They're adorable as well.
This is one that we have the deluxe edition because we backed the original Kickstarter.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is a very fun little game. I love that, you know, you've got all these different types of dragons, like the meat dragons always give you, I'm trying to remember all the different actions, but like the meat dragons always do the same thing, the bread dragons always do the same thing, the grass dragons always do the same thing. The only action that I don't like in this game is that there's one that's like, you can give a resource to another player and score a victory point if you do that. Which, you know, totally fine.
Like you said, though, it is a game where you get a lot of stuff, right? And so if you have a lot of things but not a lot of points,
right,
that can be a really beneficial action to take.
Yeah.
And also there are limits for how many things you can have.
Oh, it makes a ton of strategic sense. It's just always the action that I'm like never wanting to take because I'm just like, I don't want to help anybody. I want my dragons.
It's not a great, I feel like it's not a good, it doesn't feel like a good option early on in the game. I feel like it becomes more relevant as you get later into the play.
For sure. But yeah, it is lovely. I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about it. I bet it'll be on the next list even. So yeah, my number 19, Flamecraft.
All right, number 19 for me is one that we've talked about already, and that is Civilization.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, so you really liked this one.
I like this one a lot. I think that I really enjoy that that the card mechanism where you have, you know, like the different options and they gain power as you like let them sit. Like I think that is a really good, like that makes so much sense in my brain as like, you know, your action choices.
Right.
So I think that is one thing that brought it up so high on my list. Also, Civilization is just it's just classic. I love the computer game, not the console game. But yeah.
Would you play the computer game with me?
Maybe.
All right, you heard it here first.
So yeah, number 19, Civilization. Okay. I don't have a lot else to say about it.
Nice. My number 18 is one of our favorite lighter games. It's one that we've played with a variety of people, and it is a delight, and it's hilarious every time we play it, and that is Quacks of Quedlinburg.
Oh, I love Quacks.
I know.
Yes.
Quacks is a very fun push-your-luck game. You essentially are drawing out of your bag different chips that go into your potion. The number that's on that chip is how many spaces you move. And the idea is that you're just filling up your potion with random ingredients that you are tossing in. If you draw too many of the white ingredient, then your potion explodes and you bust, and that's it for the round. The really fun part, though, for me at least, is that after the round ends, you take however much potion you made, it translates to how much money you have for the shop. You can go and you can buy 2 new ingredients.
Up to 2.
Right. And those new ingredients, I think, are super fun because there are some that are basically just like, this gives you some extra spaces.
Sure.
But then there are some that are like...
They have powers.
Yeah, that have powers. If you play this one and it came right after a white chip, you can put that back in your bag. There are some that give you, like, if you have more of this chip in your potion than your neighbors, you're going to get points or resources. It is just a blast because everybody's kind of on a level playing field.
Right.
It also has a really interesting mechanism where players that are behind in points, they get to start at their potion further up. So it always has kind of a nice catch-up mechanic, so nobody ever feels like they're just running away with it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can definitely kind of cheese it a little bit when you know how many chips are in your bag and you kind of know what's still left. But that's part of the fun to me.
It is part of the fun. And as you get more chips, that gets so much harder.
Yes.
Because there is a finite number of spaces that are on your board.
Well, and I think the real thing is that everybody's so afraid to bust. And if you're one of those people that you never like any negative things to happen to you in a game, you may not have as good a time with this. I bust all the time.
Well, I think the important thing to know about busting in this specific game, though, is that it's not like you get nothing, right? Like at the end of each round, you get either points or that translates into coins to buy new chips. And so if you bust, you don't get to do both of those. You just get to do one.
Right. Which I appreciate.
Right. So it's not like busting gives you 0.
Yeah. So you want to be careful, but you still have incentive to kind of push it. But yeah, I think that the game is darling. I really enjoy it, and it's a fun game to play with just all sorts of players.
Agreed.
So number 18, Quacks of Quedlinburg.
My number 18 is a pretty heavy hitter. That is currently...
Okay, hold on. Let me guess. Based on everything that you've said on your list, this has to be Brass.
It is, in fact.
Yeah.
It is Brass Birmingham. It's still number 1 on Board Game Geek?
It is. As of this recording, it is number 1.
Yeah. So Brass Birmingham. This is one that we've had for quite a while, and we've only played it a handful of times. But every time we play it, man, I just come away from it so satisfied with the play.
Yeah.
And it's one that, like, as soon as we play it, I'm like, oh, I want to play it again.
Right.
Because then I remember all of the things that I thought the last time, where I was like, oh, I should have done this and I should have done that, and I'm excited to do those things.
It's one of those that it takes a minute to ramp everything up. Like, I remember the last time we played, like, a couple turns into it, I was like, I gotta take out a loan. I mean, I need cash, and I have nothing right now. And that feels so... it feels like so defeating when it happens, but it's all part of the game. And you take that loan and you put new industries out there and you make a ton of money after that.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to, take a hit to get.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it a lot.
Yeah. It's a super fun game, super satisfying to play. Yeah. So number 18, Brass Birmingham.
Okay. My number 17 is a puzzle game in our, quad group set of the AEG puzzle games, and that's Cascadia.
Oh, yeah.
Cascadia is obviously my favorite of those 4, and I think the reason for it is it's because it's completely freeform in how you're building your tableau of tiles. Basically each tile that you get has different types of terrain on it, and then it's got on the center, it's got an animal chip that you can play on it. On your turn, you always gather an animal chip and a tile. You place the tile anywhere on your board, and then you place an animal chip somewhere on one of those tiles that you have in your supply. This one's great because you never feel stuck. With Calico, we talked about that way back for me, where you just get stuck. You're like, all right, well, my only 3 options are these, and none of them fit the puzzle that I've got, so I'm just going to take this one and mark off all those points. Yeah. With Cascadia, you always kind of have an out.
Yeah.
Because you can match the terrains, or you can take an animal chip that you don't necessarily need, but you don't lose a lot for that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's where your points about the constraint of the, quilt board in Calico hurts it.
Right.
Whereas this one, you're not stuck in that one specific place. Like, you can build off in a straight line halfway across the table if you wanted to.
And if it makes sense.
Yeah.
because all the different animal chips that you play, they also have their own different way of scoring.
Right.
Like bears typically want to be by themselves, or maybe they want to be in a pair.
Right.
Or maybe they want to be in a group of 3. It depends on what card you play.
Right. You have options of what kinds of point mechanism you want the animals to have.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas like salmon, they typically score as long as you've got like a line of them, but not a cluster. So it's really interesting, and it's kind of this idea of every time the shop resets and it's your turn and you have to draw a tile and a token, you think to yourself, okay, do I want to score points based on the terrain because I could continue this? Or if I pull up this animal chip, I could really focus in on these, and that's going to be where the bulk of my points come from.
Yeah.
So, I really like that game. It's also very cozy.
It is. It's a super cozy game.
It is serene. There's not a lot of like player messing with each other. So.
Yeah. I will say, I really enjoy like that whole quad, as you called it. That whole series of games is so cozy. Is it Flat Out Games? That's the designer. They make such cozy games, and I have been really loving those lately.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my number 17, Cascadia.
Number 17 for me is Concordia.
Too low.
It's in my top 20 though.
It's too low.
So, Concordia, I know we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this probably in the next video, would be my guess. But yeah, Concordia is a very elegantly designed game.
Yes.
This is one where I wish that the art was a little better. I wish that it feels a little dated.
For sure.
It gives me like 90s kitchen vibes. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me, and maybe me alone. But I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I mean it's just got. I wish that the components were like there are a lot of things that I would love to be more like the production to be better, but the game itself is very fun.
Yeah.
The card system is really neat. The turns feel quick. It's not like a super heavy lift to teach.
Yeah.
And I think I'll end it there because, like I said, I know we're gonna talk about it a lot more later. But yeah, my number 17 is Concordia.
Okay, my number 16. I just talked about a game that is very peaceful interaction between players. 16 can be the exact opposite because it is a negotiation game, and that is Moonrakers.
Oh yeah.
So Moonrakers is one part deck builder and it's one part negotiation game, where you are going out on these space missions to be the leader of your band of misfits, space misfits. You're the Guardians of the Galaxy, basically. Not a sponsor. But it's really interesting because you're building this deck of shields and boosters and thrusters. And the first time I read this rule book, I was like, I don't understand how this works, because it basically says like you could take one action,
right?
And you're like,
how am
I going to play more cards though? And you start getting cards that allow you to play more actions, more boosters, more shields. And so every mission has, certain things that are required to complete the mission, whether that is shields or boosters or weapons or whatever else. And so if you don't have those in your deck, in your hand right away, you can enlist other players and say like, hey, I've got 3 shields, I got that covered, I need weapons, I need energy. And then players can also say like, yeah, no problem, I can opt in for that, I'll do this. And then everything is negotiable. So you can negotiate how much money you get from the mission, the victory points you're going to get from the mission, who takes the hits, because you roll like a danger dice when that happens. And then, of course, as you get more points, less and less people want to work with you, because then that's going to help you win.
Right.
But hopefully by that point, you have built up a strong enough deck that you're going to be able to run a mission by yourself.
Right. You don't need anybody else by that point. Yeah.
And so, there's some of these great moments towards the end of the game where somebody might think that they are like ready to go and take on a mission, and then they pull the wrong card at the wrong time and they lose, and it knocks them back down the ladder, and now another person is on top that nobody wants to ally with.
Yep.
So it's really about building up those friendships throughout the game. and then destroying them at the last possible second.
It is a very dynamic game,
Yes,
for sure.
which I just absolutely adore. And the art style for that is very minimalist.
It is.
You know, it
Yeah.
reminds me of like old school video game instruction booklets, but it kind of works for what this is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoy it. It's a neat one to seek out. Number 16, Moonrakers.
My number 16 is another super cozy game, which is Meadow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we've talked about this one already. I really like the very unique, way that you collect cards with, like the arrows and like on the grid. I think that the fact that you can essentially lock out a line
Right.
is super interesting. And I adore the art in this game.
It's very cute.
And collecting, like the animals and the plants and, your like landscapes and it's just it's so cute, and it's so satisfying when you're able to like set up your cards in a way that the things that score you points are also satisfying.
Yes, I agree.
Which is not always the case.
Right.
And it definitely is the case in this game, which I think is part of the reason that it is ranked so high for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite of Dominion for you. Like the stuff that scores you points is also the stuff that you want to do.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, number 16 for me is Meadow.
All right, 15 for me is a bit of a redemption arc in our list here.
Oh.
Because you criminally put this game far too low.
Is it Dwellings of Eldervale?
It is, in fact, Dwellings of Eldervale. And I totally get it. We have to play this game again.
Yeah, we definitely need to play it again.
Because there are so many aspects of this game that I just really enjoy that a lot of games just don't do. So first of all, you're building the map as you play. The map is scaled to how many players are playing, and the players actually put those tiles where they're going to go. So I think, first of all, that's super neat. The next thing that I really just enjoy about this game a lot is that each player has the same number of meeples, but different factions have different meeples with different abilities.
Sure.
Like on one faction, their workers and their dragon might do different things. On another faction, the wizard and the soldier might do different things. And I love that because you can kind of pick a faction based on your favorite playing style.
Sure.
Also, my absolute favorite aesthetic thing of any game ever is that your little worker meeples that you place around the map, when you make them dwellings, which gives you resources and sets up a home base for you, essentially, you put a tiny little hat on the meeple that's a roof, and then they become a house.
It's very cute.
It's very cute, and I'm surprised that alone didn't push it higher on your list.
I think that tells you how bad of a day that was.
Yeah. And it is. I mean, it's based on one playthrough.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a learn to teach because there's a lot going on in this game.
Yeah.
But I found it to be very satisfying, very thinky, but also just incredibly rewarding, especially when you defeat a monsters, or in some case you can submit them to your will and then you get to control the monsters. It is just so unique and so cool, and I'm really looking forward to playing it again with you and with other people because I think it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing it when I am not in the throes of a cluster feeding infant.
Okay, fine.
But yeah, I'm very excited to play it again.
15 for me, Dwellings of Eldervale.
15 for me is Photosynthesis.
Wow.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed that we had already talked about that for you. Like it had left my list entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy Photosynthesis a lot. This is one that I think, this is one that we come back to frequently. Like we have played it with a variety of people. We have played it just ourselves, and it is a very different game depending on how many players you have.
Much better 4, I think.
In some ways, I think, kind of like I said, with Ticket to Ride, I feel like, you know, you get to do more stuff when there's fewer people, and there's the satisfaction of doing more things. Whereas when you have more players, you have the that like interaction and that race for the resources.
Sure.
And so it's one again that I feel like scales really well at different player levels. And you know, maybe if we play it like a lot, maybe that's going to end up feeling a little boring, but I don't feel like I've gotten to that point yet. I think that I am so drawn to just kind of the unique way that that points are gathered and that the resources play, where you move the sun around the board. And so decisions that you make at the beginning on where to place your trees really have a huge impact on your system that you've built later on in the game.
Sure.
And so you can also strategically place things to get more points or more sunlight later.
Well, it's also important of like, okay, I've gotten basically everything I'm going to get for this tree for the next 3 turns. This is the time to harvest it.
Right. And there is a lot of strategy that goes into that as well. And this is one where I know that we do have the night expansion that we haven't played yet, and I would really love to get that to the table as well. It's a game that I really love. You know, there's the naturey themed ones really get me. So yeah, photosynthesis is a huge favorite of mine at number 15.
All right, my number 14 is a game that you talked about on this list already. It's a very heavy Euro economic game, and that's Brass Birmingham.
Yeah.
Just like you said, I mean, Brass is one of those games that you play and you are kind of head down into it, and you're planning your next move, and you're thinking about what you're going to do, and it is a really dense, really thinky game.
It is, absolutely.
It is the definition of crunchy.
Yeah.
But it is just that aspect that I just love about it so much, because I mean, like, you know, I don't care too much about the theme, but that gameplay is fantastic. I mean, the interaction of, okay, I've got to be thinking about my network because I'm going to pull your resources to fund this, because then I'm going to create that.
That's beer that gets so scarce at the end.
Right. It's, and yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you're just kind of planning out every turn after the next and you've got kind of a sequence of things that you're planning out that can get shifted, and then there's just multiple avenues that you can travel down. Also, something that you didn't talk about that I just find so fascinating about this game is that it's 2 phases.
Oh yeah.
You've got your canal phase where you're essentially building boats to travel down canals, and then once you've played all the cards that are in that phase, everything switches, and now you have railroads. So all that network that you build is gone.
Yeah, that's true.
And you've got to rebuild, and railroads actually cost more than the canals.
They do, yeah.
So you've got to build faster, quicker, better.
Well, and you score a lot of points based on the connections that you make. And so, you know, you score them with the canals, and so you had that network where you were, you know, trying to maximize your points there, but then the railroads, you have to be really intentional about where you place those in order to score them well.
Right. Yeah. But it's great. It's definitely one of those that is a hard to teach game.
Absolutely.
Especially from the rule book itself. But once you kind of get it, it's a fantastic experience.
It's so good.
So yeah, my number 14, Brass Birmingham.
My number 14 is Encyclopedia.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't remember you having this good of a time with it. Yeah. That's cool.
I like it. I mean, I think this is another one where, you know, the theme really captivated me.
Yeah.
I just kind of love that concept of, you know, you're writing your encyclopedia of these animals, and
it's neat.
It's one where the play was also fairly unique. You know, we hadn't really played something quite like it. And yeah, I really enjoy kind of the variety of actions and like the resource gathering and that final action of, you know, putting everything together.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember you being a little turned off by the fact that you've got these different genuses of animals, and at one point we had nothing but like snakes on the
Yeah,
board. There's a
that's
lot
true.
of reptiles.
There are a lot of reptiles.
Which is fine. I mean, snakes are, they're fine.
Well, and maybe that's just what we had in the deck at that moment.
I do think it's one of those that when played with other players, you'd probably go through more of that deck, so you wouldn't have quite as many snakes.
Yeah.
But...
That is true of another game that we'll talk about later.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so 14, Encyclopedia.
All right, 13 for me is another game that you've talked about previously, and it's another fairly heavy game that we played for the first time. That is Great Western Trail Argentina.
That's really high for you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this game because of all the different elements for it. Like, first of all, you're building your deck of cows, and depending on what is in your hand when you get to the port of call, which I don't remember what that is. Argentina? Buenos Aires? Buenos Aires. It's probably Buenos Aires. It's the only Argentinian city I can name right now. But depending on the cows that are in your hand, when you reach that spot, that's what you sell. And so if you've got a bunch of smaller cows in your hand when you get there, you're not going to get a lot for it.
Right.
The other interesting thing about that is any duplicates you have cancel out. So you only score one of them, even if you've got 5 of them in your hand. So you want to have a nice variety in your deck. But then there's just the aspect of you're putting different properties from your player board down on the trail that other players are going to have to stop at. And even if they just pass by and don't take the action there, they're going to have to pay you a tax.
Yep.
Which... I love taxing other players. I don't like paying tax, but I love getting tax. So that's really fun.
Yeah.
But this one is also interesting because you've got the railroad that's managed on one of the sides too. That's also scoring you bonuses.
Yep.
So there's a lot that's going on with this game. I remember when we played it, we actually played it over 2 days.
We sure did, yeah.
It was just that dense of a teach. But that being said, it was well worth it both of the 2 days.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I had a blast playing it, so I just highly recommend it. That is my number 13, Great Western Trail, Argentina.
My number 13 is Earth. Yeah.
Delightful.
Yes. I had an awesome time playing Earth.
Yeah.
It is one that, we had the benefit of being able to learn from somebody else. And not having to go through the rule book. So that is one that we don't really have the experience. We don't know the rule book.
Right.
We haven't really used it.
Right.
But I really enjoy just kind of the variety of ways to score. I think it's a really engaging game because, like you talked about, you're doing something on every single turn.
Right.
Like even when it's not your turn, it's your turn. And, you don't always get to choose the action because the person whose turn it is gets to decide which of the types everybody gets to do, and they get to do the more powerful version of it. But, if you can kind of anticipate what other people are going to do, or you just make it so that every action is going to be useful to you, then it's a very satisfying play.
Yeah.
Also, components wise, I really love stacking the little trees.
Yeah, the little those are cool. The other thing I really like about this game is that with a lot of these like tableau builders, you have so many cards that you're gathering, and so many times you're like, well, these cards don't fit my strategy. This one gives you incentive to use those cards as compost.
That's true.
So there's an action that you can take that allows you to compost cards. So you can take all those cards that you're like, well, I'm not going to use these because they don't fit my strategy, and you can just junk them.
Yeah.
And then those score you points at the end.
Yeah, I will also say I think that, the like central objectives, I feel like maybe got a little bit like forgotten. I think that it's...
I definitely forgot them. It cost me the game.
But I also think that, that it can be really beneficial to like go after those.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that kind of like when we talked about Verdant, you have a grid size that you're working towards, but it's super flexible until you reach either like the maximum in one direction or the other.
Right.
So I appreciate that kind of flexibility, and then it gets puzzly when you are trying to fit cards into the blank spaces that you now have. or on the edges or wherever's left. So, yeah, I really enjoyed playing Earth, number 13.
All right, number 12 for me is another big surprise. I'd heard a lot about this game before we picked it up, and we actually started with the special edition. That is Castles of Burgundy. Mm-hmm. And I will say, you know, after playing it recently this year, I feel like it's going to go a lot higher.
Yeah,
because we played it with one Duchy board. The game itself comes with like 32 different variations of it. And I just think that is so unique. You know, we've talked about this game before, but essentially every turn you're rolling two dice. Those 2 dice correspond to different actions. You can take a tile, place a tile, go shopping. I mean, there's so much stuff that you can do.
Yeah.
But this game is a great like point salad game where you are just constantly getting points.
Yeah.
You get points for animals in your livestock. You get points for placing castles. You get points for mines. I mean, there's just so much cool stuff that you are doing every turn, and it is just an absolute delight. Plus, that special edition just looks so good.
It does. It looks amazing.
But yeah, I absolutely adore this game. It is one that is super fun to teach. It is one that is super fun to just play, and once everybody knows it, it goes by very quickly.
Yes, it's true.
But yeah, my number 12, Castles of Burgundy.
Number 12 for me is Architects of the West Kingdom. Yeah. Yeah, this is one that, this was a huge surprise.
Yeah.
You know, this is, you know, the I still don't super love the art.
It's grown on me.
It's, like, it's good.
Yeah.
But it's not my favorite art style.
It's colorful, it's very cartoonish. It's, what did we say? It's like medieval caricature.
It's like a caricature.
Yeah.
Which is charming in its own way.
Yeah.
But what I really enjoyed about this is that it kind of forced, like, neither of us wanted to do the, like, send people to jail action.
Oh, that is not true. I absolutely wanted to do that. Okay,
but then, you know, it kind of forces you to like recycle your people, right? And through that like jail system.
Yeah.
And that ended up, you know, I didn't love it like at the very beginning of the game, but as we got further into the play, like, it's just so fun.
Yeah.
To just like do that like back and forth with like figuring out where you're gonna like place your meeples and balancing the strength that you want by placing meeples multiple times over turns. And then just like wiping the whole board by just like
it's very
arresting them all. It is a super unique worker placement mechanism that I just had a great time with.
Yeah, another one of my favorite things is just that if you have a meeple already on that action that you're taking, you place another one, you get 2 of that resource.
Right.
Or you get to do that action twice.
Right.
I love that. Like you said, it's incredibly unique. And yeah, this game is so good.
Yeah.
Now, we recently played the second game in that trilogy of games called Paladins of the West Kingdom. I think I might like it more.
You think?
I am totally a convert to Garphill games. I think that they are just so unique and so cool, and I want to show this game to more people.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so number 12, Architects of the West Kingdom.
Right. To close out my list, I had to check this a couple times to make sure that this was right, because this game was definitely in my top 10 for a long time this year, and it just barely fell out. I love this game a lot. Every time we play it, it is one that I find so much joy in it. It is equally cozy in that I love the art style, I love the theming on it, and equally crunchy where I'm just always thinking of new ways that I can make it work. That's Wingspan.
I thought we were going to have the same one for a minute, but no.
Bummer. Well, I know where it's coming on your list then. You haven't said it. But yeah, Wingspan is just a delightful game. I also credit it as one of the games that really got us into this hobby.
Well, and it continues to kind of be a gateway game for a lot of people.
You know, we kind of put it away for a little bit as we started getting into deeper, more strategic games. But, you know, every time we find our way back to it, I'm always reminded of why it's such a great design.
It is so good.
You know, we've played this game with just about every one of our board game friends. We've played it with my parents. And it is just, it's a very elegant design. It's easy to understand and explain. And on top of all of that, you've just got this gorgeous theming of so birds. And I don't even like birds.
You really don't.
But I find this so interesting. You get these little bits of facts. Every bird has like a different power or ability. That's only improved with the expansions. And I mean, I'm already thinking like, okay, they've released an expansion every 2 years. Does that mean we're getting Africa or South America this year? But yeah, I really look forward to just looking through those decks of cards with all the different birds and mixing them all together. It's
so beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
But yeah, my number 11 to close out this list, Wingspan.
My number 11 to close out this list is Ark Nova. Yeah, you see why I thought maybe we were gonna...
I wonder if these are gonna be switched on our list.
You think so?
I wonder. It depends on how high Wingspan is for you.
Yeah. So Ark Nova. This is another one that has that like card placing mechanic that I really like, where you're
it gets stronger.
It gets stronger the longer it sits. Yeah. You take your action and then that goes back to the beginning and the rest of them move forward. And I love that. This one has the added element of you're able to upgrade those actions.
Yes.
And make them stronger even. And in some cases you have to make it stronger to unlock things. Like there are certain animals that you can only play if you've upgraded the animal card, and you know, things like that. But I love that. I love the collecting of the animals. I think that it is super satisfying to kind of, you know, set your tableau, like to collect them.
Well, and then there's also the aspect of like you have to be able to place them in your zoo, which means you have to have an enclosure that size.
Yes. Well, and then the like specialty enclosures as well, and you know, it's so satisfying.
Yeah, I have to admit, the first time I saw this game and I like looked at the back of the box, I was like, I thought this was gonna be like a cool zoo tycoon-ish game, and this one just looks like it's got animals, but it's just like a spreadsheet. And I was so wrong about that. I mean, it is just a great game, which, you know, it's got a big, thick deck of cards that can be daunting, especially if you're playing it at 2 players.
Yes. This is one. It's one where this is the one I was referencing.
Yeah,
where I
that
think,
makes sense.
You know, when we played it with just 2 of us, we didn't get very far through that deck.
Right.
But it really moves when you have more.
Well, and then it also sets up the problem, like, you could get a very real strategy of, like, I'm going to make a petting zoo and get all my points from petting zoo animals.
And not see a petting zoo animal.
Right. Yeah. Or see one enough to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for this game, and then see no more for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
But with 4 players, because that shop is changing more, you're getting more cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's one that I thoroughly enjoy every time we get it to the table.
For sure.
And... yeah, it's very good. Ark Nova, number 11, rounding out my my list.
Yeah. That means the next time we talk about this, we're going to be talking about our top 10 games of all time. I have a pretty good feeling of what's still to come on your list. I think I know quite a few of them. But this has been a super fun project.
It really has.
And
it's so interesting.
You know, going into 2024 this year, I'm a little sad that we're not kind of tracking the same thing, because I've been personally tracking a little bit because, as I mentioned, you know, there are definitely some games that we've played that I'm like, ooh, that might be my new number 1.
You want to do like the year-to-year comparison.
Yeah, and just see kind of where they fall, where they increase, and then figure out where new games kind of slot in there as well. You know, one of the things I love about having a vast board game collection is just games that do an interesting mechanism totally differently. You know, like what we were talking about with Architects, where it's like, yeah, it's a worker placement game, but it's not just a worker placement game. there are just so many different things that set it apart from every other worker placement game.
Right.
But yeah, I'm excited to talk about 10 through 1, so stay tuned. And if you haven't already, make sure that you click that bell and subscribe, because you do not want to miss our top 10 games of all time. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Bye.
Bye.